Hi,
Hello,
I'm Julian.
and I'm Tom.
We are Team Binge. We are here to talk about The Lowdown. This is episode 4 of season 1. This one was called Short on Cowboys. Tom, I gotta be honest, you could write anything in the title of this show and I would just read it because I don't do any checks. So I'm assuming this one's called Short on Cowboys. I don't really know
Uh-huh.
what that means, but I enjoyed this episode. We took some turns I wasn't expecting, certainly in the
Mm-hmm.
end. And
Yeah.
then how we spent our time with Lee and Betty Joe, I found interesting. I've got some questions about a couple of things that went on, like negligent
Mm-hmm.
discharges and firearm protocol. But
Uh-huh.
I did enjoy this episode, and they certainly threw me for a loop in how it ended. Tom, did,
Mm-hmm.
did you enjoy this one?
Yeah, I did, and couldn't agree more. Like, I did not see that ending coming, but like looking back on it, like maybe I kind of should have. Like they were trying to make him out like as like somebody who's trying to, I guess, right past wrongs or something, and going to therapy. So it's like, of course, yeah, they're gonna kill that guy. But I liked the episode. I think it was different than I feel like I thought it would be. Like, because we kind of had that little side quest episode last time. Now we're kind of get like full on main characters having discourse and kind of moving the plot forward. And I enjoyed it. It was a good one.
Sure. And we started kind of weird. We broke in with Dale, and whenever I don't know why I don't have this just in my mind grapes, but whenever Dale's talking, I should just understand that they're reading his letters because I'm always like,
Yes.
so when this one started, I was like, man, if we spend the whole episode with Dale just talking to camera, I'm going to have some real issues with this. But instead, it's just opening with them reading all of the letters that they had gathered from the books before they were burned.
Mm-hmm.
We get some fun. I don't know why I haven't done it yet, and maybe we mentioned his name in the beginning of the pod in episode 1 and 2, but I really enjoy this actor, and
Yeah,
I
Tim Blake
appreciate
Nelson.
that. Yeah, rather than them killing him and just leaving him out of the show, they bring him back every episode. He's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like a weed, Tom, and what we learn is a weed is a plant that is out of place, and he's the weed. I don't think, Tom, I'm not a plantist, a plant
Mm-hmm.
scientist, but I don't think that is the supreme definition of a weed.
I don't think so. Yeah, my botany career has told me otherwise. But I like the sense of it, like where you find a weed, like, a bunch of wildflowers can be considered weeds, so they're beautiful in some contexts. But if they're like in your backyard or your HOA's yelling at you because they're in your front yard, they're a pest. And he's kind of essentially saying that he was seen as a weed or a pest to his greater family.
Sure, which brings up we're brought to you by Roundup. Roundup, kill every plant all the time, and maybe cancer will come later. I don't know. Love Roundup, Tom. I spray it on everything from Christmas trees to orange trees in the backyard. Also brought to you by Home Depot. You can return a tree after a year if it dies to Home Depot. I just want to point that out. I recently
Yeah.
returned 6, which they don't check if you round up the trees before you send them over. So,
It's very cowboy of you, rounding up the trees.
yes, those are our 2 sponsors, Roundup and Trees from Home Depot. Tom, one of the things I realized as Dale was talking is, and I should have known this earlier, but he mentions like the Osage Hills because he's talking about how him and his brother were raised, which made
Mm-hmm.
me think, did you ever watch the movie, about the Osage Indians with Killers
Let's
of the
see.
Flower Moon?
Oh, yes. The Martin Scorsese, like 8.5 hour movie.
Yeah. I think it was 9, but a
Mm-hmm.
great book, Killers of the Flower Moon. But it is about the Osage Indians and how at one point in American history, per capita, they were like the richest people because they had the mineral rights when the government
Mm-hmm.
took their land. So they had all the oil. So I found it interesting that this kind of takes place in that same background or same location. And I'm
Yeah, that is interesting. I didn't put that together.
Yeah, and so we get a little backstory on Dale and I guess how his brother Donald was like his guy, where his parents didn't really care for him, but his brother was always his kind of protector and brought him along on adventures.
Yeah, I kind of said like Donald essentially took him under his wing and was like a good brother growing up, and it was really his parents that were seemingly very unkind and not supportive of him.
Tom, now that I think about it, we should have called this podcast The Lesser Son. Because while Dale is a lesser son, both you and I are lesser sons in our families.
That's true.
We
It's
both
very true.
come from families where we only have brothers. And I mean, I've always considered you the lesser son in your family, and I've always considered myself the lesser son in my family. So we should have called this podcast The Lesser Sons. That's what we should have called it.
I like it. It's got a good ring to it.
Sure. You disagree. You wanted to be the better son or the best son. Anyways,
I wanted to be, but whatever. We'll start a band.
Sure,
The Lesser Sons. We'll say country music.
But we'll spell son S-U-N. Anyways, man, we've digressed already. Okay. Speaking of judging people, I appreciate that the writer and Lee can't help but judge these after death letters that were written by Dale. I found this criticism very funny.
Yeah, it's great. And I like them sitting at the table and Francis reading the letters and kind of doing it together as a team. It made me think about the order of these, because we joked about he found the first letter conveniently.
Sure.
That said I've got a bunch of other ones. I'm wondering if there was a sense of these needed to be in some order to make a grander story, but it doesn't seem like it. It seems like this is just more of his backstory, and we're not getting necessarily nuggets. Maybe we'll get them in future episodes. That's kind of moving us forward.
I would argue when you look at that table, they clearly have categorized them well and organized them well. They're certainly not just spread all over this diner table in no particular order. So I think Lee seems like a pretty organized fella, Tom. So I think he's got it covered.
Organized and good with money.
Yep, exactly.
There is also a book that is shown during this flashback of which I like how he refers to it as his opus of the book called Dust Bowl Kid. And I want to just have put a pin in or clock the cover art on this, because it's got Dale and then some other gentlemen on it, which I would argue we see later in this episode.
Really? Okay. I noticed it was a classic kind of Western, cheap paperback novel, and he's holding a gun in it, but I did not clock that there was a second gentleman that I should have recognized in the episode. So I guess we're going to talk about that later then, Tom.
Yes, put the pin in it. We'll pick it up later.
Okay. We have pins in so many things from so many podcasts that we never go back to, but that's
I'll get
fine.
to this one.
Dale tells the story, which I'm a little bit confused on timeline. So he writes about the night where the skinheads show up and he shoots at them. I was under the impression that that was the same night he died, but there's a couple of times that it's mentioned in this episode where that wasn't the night that he died, that happened, I guess, a day or two before, back when Lee's talking to Betty Jo. Did you get a sense of this timeline?
Well, I think we had known that these skinhead dudes, the two that go to the house, essentially botched the job. So It wasn't them actually killing Dale, and this probably obviously happened before. And then there was some preceding incident that actually led to Dale's death. But I'm with you. I was a little bit confused about that, because they also do it in the scene where they're like, oh, we're reading this letter, and this one was written a week before. So it kind of does jump back a little bit.
Sure. And this is also a callback to when Lee finds the skinhead's hat in the yard before the estate sale, which you would think someone would have picked that hat up previously. I mean, you typically look at before you do an estate sale. I mean, landscaping is a big part of. You want a landscape that invites people into the house where the person died, so they can buy their stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, that grass was a bit thick, so it kind of got lost in there.
Sure. I do appreciate during this whole scene, Lee is forgetting that he's talking to his daughter. So he's keeps bringing up dangerous things that happened. And she's like, should I be worried? And he's like, no. Everything's cool.
Yeah. He's like, oh, they're just some skinheads. They come and go. But even saying that Ellen had killed them, and now she knows a lot more about the danger that Lee was in and probably currently is in, and probably her by proxy is in as well. So understandable. She's the voice of reason here.
Yeah, I got the sense that Francis was like, should I be worried for me? And Lee took it as, should she be worried about him? And Lee's like, no, I'll be fine. But I would be like, no, we should definitely be worried about Francis. In fact, let's get her out of this situation right now. And while this conversation's going on, we are cutting back to Dale and the letters. And so we do have this recall that Dale told Betty Jo about the skinheads attacking, and makes a point in his letter to point out she was not surprised. In fact, she seems to be almost anticipating it. And then he makes some comment about, I have sensed a deep coldness in her recently.
I love the poetic, writing that he has. But definitely applying that she knew, and even Francis clocks it later when they're having the discussion at the diner.
Sure. And then we find out that in one of the letters a week before, Dale punched Donald. And, the mystery in this episode is what that punch is about. But later on, we find that it is simply Donald reveals to Dale that Pearl is not his daughter, but Donald's daughter. They should have, I know that like when you have kids, you try and do like similar names like Dale and Donald, but I really would have appreciated if one of these guys was Eugene and the other one was like Zephyr, just so we, could have different names, but it's a little bit confusing.
I like the showism though of like they see the scene, but then they kind of cut out what he said, and you kind of have to guess potentially what it was. Like I almost thought, because I think we found out clearly in this episode that Dale is gay. I almost thought it was like some sort of like homophobic slur or something that he kind of took. But I'm glad that we get the answer relatively quickly. We don't have to wait like multiple episodes.
Sure. I mean, they lead us also down a path of there's some sort of like inheritance or ownership of land argument that happens. I do want to point out that this is clarified by Betty Jo. And there is an opportunity here where Betty Jo is making this up for Lee. So I mean, while it's kind of convenient that the truth that would cause the punch would be that Pearl is Donald's, I mean, there is a chance that Betty Jo, who might be the murderer, I'm not completely convinced she's not, might be making all of this up because she is the only witness other than Donald that can corroborate what happened here. So
yeah, for sure.
I want to keep that. Open. And yeah, to your point, he does write down this was a most vile provocation, which I just appreciate the writer and Lee that he's got to. That is the thing. I guess maybe it's Dale that says that, and Lee writes it down word for word.
Yeah, he puts it on a post-it or something. Yeah, that he's going to put on his board because we know he's a visual thinker.
Sure. Just so the show can complicate Lee's life a little bit more, while we're worried about the mystery, Lee's life is a little bit turned upside down where his ex-wife shows up. I guess she's not the ex-wife. They were never married, which I should realize. But Samantha shows up, and she's like, guess what? I'm getting engaged. And Lee's like, well, you don't believe in marriage, so that's an easy answer. And she's like, I said yes. And I just appreciate how devastated Lee was in this moment.
Yeah, that's interesting to say that because I guess I assumed that they were married at one point and just separated. But yeah, maybe they had Francis and then just decided never get married. So he immediately thinks that that is so. But yeah, I don't know. It's and I feel like this is kind of like the catalyst that leads Lee on the rest of this kind of journey and maybe why he kind of has this relationship.
With Betty Jo. Seeks comfort, Tom.
There you go. Well said. But I mean, it's tough for Lee, right? Because his, I would say not ex-wife, but Samantha here, she says as much and says she's happy. So, and there's some good acting too from Ethan Hawke here, where she leaves, he's just kind of sitting at the diner wondering if he should kind of respond, and he's just kind of joking on his words a bit.
You're right. No, I thought this was well done. His personal life is not my main focus of the show, but obviously they've got as you mentioned, this propels him to do some tequila shots, some dancing, and some other dancing. So we have a quick cut. I've got questions about Alan, and I know that his character is not long for this world. We see it at the end of this episode. But,
can I ask? I'm going to ask you right here. Like, does he? Do you think he dies at the end of the episode?
Like, I believe so. I mean, it's. I mean, that's shot through the neck, which is pretty fatal, and also he then crashes the car at a bit of a high speed. So if they bring him back, if they're like, oh, the bullet got blocked by the crucifix you always wear because you're a religious person, because you're a bad person, so we have to make you religious. Thanks, show. I clocked that, and it bothered me instantly, Tom.
My wife and I did as well, and then knew how upset you'd be.
God, it's such a shorthand these days. You're like, make him religious if he's going to be bad, if he's going to be a hypocrite. Anyways, I'll get off my soapbox.
I just don't. I mean, I'm kind of with you. I assume he's dead, especially when he kind of like hovers over the car at the end. Again, I know I'm jumping ahead, but I just don't understand. Like, why just not have him die then? Like, why have him crash into these car later? If he's not going to be like rescued in some form or fashion. But anyways.
No, I agree. It made the life of the new assassin a little bit more complicated that he drove off and made a scene. Maybe he was unable to like dispose of the body, and that's why that guy was upset. I don't know why the show did that, but I do think he's dead. What I did not appreciate is in episodes 1 through 3, Alan is pretty confident. Like, he's got a plan. He seems to know what's going on, and I feel like they did a little bit of a hard swerve on 4, where all of a sudden it's like, we see him with his scary tattoos, we see him going to AA and Narcotics Anonymous, and he's like confessing to this group of people, and so we see a much more like conflicted Alan, where that's not at all what we saw in like 1 through 3. Like, he killed those dudes in cold blood, or at least the show implies that he did. And that was like a pretty calculated, like he has them go out to the bridge, like he murders them. And then he goes to Lee, he goes to others, and he's very threatening. Like he threatens, not Marty, but he sits down with Marty. I don't know. I felt like it was a weird swerve in episode 4 to be like, all of a sudden Alan is like having, I guess, second thoughts, or he's just a little bit more conflicted. Did you get that? This was just a different Alan than what we've seen in episodes 1 through 3.
Yeah, I kind of agree, and that's kind of what I mentioned up top. It's like I didn't necessarily see this coming in terms of him getting shot at the end, but the way that his character kind of turned in this, of like being this reformed guy that's going to AA meetings and trying to like confess to some of these things, or even kind of going later to the house and kind of finding out somebody's like kind of following him, or that Lee was kind of poking around and asking questions. Like that makes sense if you're going to potentially kill or shoot the character at the end. But I agree, he doesn't seem quite as aligned, confident, menacing dude he was in the first couple.
Right. Like, he shows up with groceries for Blackie's mom, who he knows is dead, and she doesn't, although she's eyeballing those groceries. Like, why is he bringing groceries?
Hot Pockets.
He also has, during this confession time, he's like, I did something wrong, and I like will affect my boss, who like when I was, alone, I had nowhere to turn. He took care of me, and I feel bad about that. And at one point he makes a phone call where he's like, hey, I need you to help me clean something up in the river. My guy, this has been days. Like, we didn't think to clear up that murder like earlier. I'm a little bit confused on this character and what they're trying to do. It was almost like the actor that plays Alan was like, hey, I gotta roll in a Scorsese movie and I gotta go. And they're like, all right, cool. Changes episode 6 and 7, but we'll work through it. I don't know. It was a bit strange to me.
Yeah, he'll be back in some form. They'll find his letters, and we'll read him his letters, and he'll come back.
Sure. Maybe he'll be alive just from, like, the neck up, He'll just be, like,
in a jar?
In Futurama. He'll be in one of those glass cases just talking. Tom, and I think now that you talked about that book cover, I've got some idea of what you were implying about Dale's book. But we have this quick cut where a handsome gentleman who is a really good charcoal sketch artist is outside of Lee's place, and he has a picture of Dale, and he sells it to him for $30, which seemed steep, but Lee pays him $100, which, once again, Lee, just bad with money. There's such thing as change. I recently gave my 12-year-old money for a snack bar. I gave him too much money, expecting to get change back. He came back to me and was like, hey, sorry, you're getting no money back. They asked me if I wanted change, and I said no. And I was like, what are you doing? Like, I don't know. So I've done a poor job teaching my son the value of a dollar. But
That's incredible.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm assuming this is potentially like Dale's like lover or interest, whatever, because yeah, like him drawing pictures of him and turning it into to Lee to sell, which is kind of an odd way to get these characters together or bring this character into the show, because he's like, what? I saw you wrote an article and I drew a picture, so I'm going to give you the picture. It was kind of a weird interaction, but this does seem to be the exact gentleman who was drawn on the cover of Dale's book that gets mentioned in the beginning of the episode.
Tom, we've been very clear about this. There's historical record. I'm going to go first between the two of us. We know that.
Okay.
I would like you to take all of those charcoal sketch drawings you have of me and then just try and sell them to my various family members. And you tell me who doesn't buy. You come by the old gravesite. Actually, I'm being shot into space into a bottle rocket. So just talk to the sky and be like, hey, your brother, finangled me down to $12. In fact, he wanted a 3 for $12 deal. So
he wanted me to pay him money to take it.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll take it if you give me $20.
I will come down and I will smite him, Tom. Just give me a heads up which one of my brothers doesn't.
Will do.
If one brother pays in gold, then that'll be a good sign.
Excellent.
Okay, Lee's at his store. It took me a beat to recognize who this guy was. This is the Heartland editor, and we find out Elijah. That Donald Washburn is suing him. We also find out that this Heartland editor loves shrooms.
Great.
Which, Tom, I'll give you the floor. You could talk about your shrooms experiences all day long.
It's incredible. Yeah, I don't know why he comes on shrooms. I think he even makes mention, it's like, oh, if I'm going to come talk to you or like about something serious, I'm going to be high on shrooms. It was a weird exchange, but it did take me a second to clock who this was. But I do appreciate him as an actor, realizing, hey, a lot of the audience members may not know who I am, so I'm going to wear a t-shirt that has my name on it.
I did clock that, too. But honestly, Tom, it's not even his name. I needed him to be like, hey, our magazine, The Heartland, of which I am the editor, and my name is Elijah, we're being sued, because that
was on the back of the shirt.
Yeah. His job title and where he works is on the back. I really appreciate Lee trying to turn the situation around for him. He's like, listen, this is the best thing that could happen to the Heartland Press, you guys getting sued. And then he goes into this historic lesson, which I was unaware of, Tom.
Yeah, this Debbie Does Dallas metaphor I thought was quite fantastic. And I learned a lot about, we'll just call it old cinema.
Sure, erotic
cinematography
films.
is probably pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to point out that everyone should put this arrow in their quiver for next time someone's like, I'm getting sued. You can be like, let me tell you a story about how this is good news for you. Publicity, that's what you're looking for. So
my wife is just filing for divorce.
Yeah, well, that's something different. But all right. So we then have a quick conversation with. Did you know Marty's last name was Chubb, or is that a nickname?
I think I would guess a nickname, because a couple of the characters that are closer to Marty, I think both Donald and Betty Jo have called him Chubb, but yeah, I only know him as Marty.
I don't know if this makes me a bad person, but every time they say that, I just think, oh, he's going to have a fake hand that an alligator took when he was helping Happy Gilmore golf or learn to golf.
That's understandable.
Yeah, he's the Carl Weathers of this show. I don't know. So Marty and Donald are having, I guess, Donald's having lunch. Marty's just staring at him. Something about hot dogs and onions. I don't know. It all looked gross to me. But Marty is upset that Donald sent him to evict the widow. And Donald, I guess not a good dude, does not realize why the optics of this look bad and why he should not do this. So it feels like this scene is just to show that the foundation of this relationship is cracking, essentially, right? Marty will he's not necessarily in Donald's corner fully.
I still don't understand, what is their back relationship where he would let all this stuff go or still do these things for Donald, because even Donald gives him this speech about being under incredible pressure and everything, running for office, and then he even has that backhanded comment oh, somebody in your position wouldn't understand, which obviously Marty takes offends to and should. Yeah, I'm sure we'll maybe get it to understand why Marty is putting up with all this stuff, but agreed. Like, cracks in the foundation, I do think Marty will join Team Lee or Team not this guy at some point.
Right. Team Betty Joe, Team Lee, someone that's not Donald. I appreciate the dynamic here. I also appreciate that Marty like reasons with him and like to do something. He's like, hey, you need to go talk to her. And Donald just goes, no. It's like, all right, interesting.
Yeah, he tried. He tried to give him some advice.
We'll see where this all goes. All right. The breakdown of this like back half is all Lee and Betty Joe. And I appreciate that it starts with like Lee trying to be a super sleuth. Like he's following behind her, and they're the only two cars on this 2-lane road in flat Oklahoma. It must be terrible to try and follow someone in Oklahoma where there's just miles and miles of flat land. But Betty
I would argue his pursuit vehicle is not very inconspicuous either.
That's fair. Just a giant pedo van, as Waylon would call it. Betty Joe, I thought it was interesting. She immediately takes off her wedding ring and she lets him pull up beside her. So she kind of predicts what's going to go on, and it's almost premeditated that they are going to end up dancing together. We'll just call it. But this leads to them in a diner. And she essentially calls him out for everything that he said about her and the family in his article, which I thought this was just a great scene between two good actors.
Well, and I think it was needed, right? Because if you're going to have these characters kind of like hook up later, like you can't have her just like immediately just forgive him for everything. Like, and I like how they had this back and forth where she needed to get all this stuff off her chest. And even I think at the end of it, he's like, I didn't think you'd take it as good as you did or something like that, which is a good exchange.
Right. And she was like, I'm happy I got to tear into you. You took it well. And he essentially, this leads to him like, hey, condolences on your husband dying. Let's drink some tequila, which I honestly like. I felt like I was going to throw up just watching all these shots of tequila.
So many.
And
We've
all made the mistake where we visited a widow and just kept ordering tequila shots. But just not a fun time, Tom. Not a fun time. Yeah. Although this show makes it real fun because there's some karaoke, there's some tequila. This leads to Lee like opening up about how he's brokenhearted that his ex, I guess, not wife, I keep wanting to say it, but Samantha, just the mother of his child who never wanted to get married to him, is now getting married to a dentist. Did you feel like him saying dentist like put a little bit of English on the insult? He was like, there's no job more boring than a guy that's a dentist. I felt like this was shot at dentists, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it really puts the dagger into Lee's heart that it was a dentist of all people.
Right, which, I mean, shout out to dentists. They're great people. I don't really know what Lee's deal is.
He doesn't floss, probably.
That's what it is. Or when he does floss, it looks like a murder scene because there's just so much blood. I don't know. I enjoyed this. They look like they were having fun. Sometimes, like, a turn like this in a show is so unrealistic. Like, oh, all of a sudden these two who have been, like, essentially at ends or enemies are now dancing, both vertically and horizontally. But I thought this show did it well, where it's like, hey, as you said, they addressed their issues. She kind of got him to open up. The alcohol loosens them up. I mean, Tom, you're a big karaoke guy. I mean, karaoke is just bad decision central. I didn't
see Lee up there. It was only Betty Joe, which is a bummer because I feel like Lee could crush a karaoke stage.
Oh, I thought he was definitely going to join her in some sort of duet. Maybe they just cut that out of the show. But I thought this was well done. I didn't think it was unrealistic that two hurting people would like end up back at the house together, you know?
Well, and we even got a thing, I think, at the end, like when they wake up the next morning, where it does seem like they're both like using each other, right? Not only for the relationship, but also like Betty Jo's giving this writer this information, and obviously Lee is trying to get information out of her and understand what's going on with the death of Dale. So yeah, it's a two-way street in multiple ways.
Sure. They Uber home, which is responsible,
Ugh,
They
I hate drunk driving at shows. Like they just yada yada it. Like I thought when Lee gets to the house and like she goes to make another drink and he just seems to like be perfectly sober, I thought, oh, maybe he was drinking water the whole time. But yeah, he just essentially flips a switch and starts snooping around the house a bit.
Sure. When she walks out with that drink and he squeezes the lime in it, oh man, Tom, I was so jealous in that moment. Currently not mixing booze and medication. And
bummer.
I just,
sorry, buddy.
Oh man, just the way it looked so good. But yeah, I'm
You'll be
definitely
back.
with you. The drinking and the driving, super bad. But man, did those drinks look good, Tom. They looked so good.
The drinks when they were safely at home looked good.
Oh,
They
sure.
should have gotten there differently.
Sure. The one in the cup holder of the pedo van, that one I was against.
Correct.
I thought the show laid it on pretty thick when he's like looking at the pictures of Pearl and he's looking at Dale with Pearl. I was not surprised by the reveal later on when we find out that Pearl was not Dale's kid, that it was Donald's. I felt like they were like
they
they telegraphed
the
it
groundwork
pretty well. Yeah. And we get her telling the story about finding Dale and like what happened the night he died. No, not the night he died. Forgive me, the night that the skinheads attacked. And so, or wait, is this the night he died? She claims she's on the couch when Dale did it, and he calls her a liar. But how would Dale have written a letter after he died? Now I'm super confused, Tom.
No, actually, yeah, now that you talk about it, I'm confused as well because, yes, like, it seemed the way it was shot, it was like, Lee is clearly catching her in a lie because we saw this part from her. So I don't know if it was, I think the conversation was not when Dale died. Like, she's saying she was on the couch when the skinheads attacked. So that's where Dale, or Lee is catching her in this lie. It's not, like, I still don't think we have any information about the night of Dale's actual death.
Okay.
I think. But I could be wrong.
Yeah,
Who knows?
I'm confused about that timeline. So I'm sure someone is listening to us just like screaming at their iPod. Please reach out to us at Team Binge Podcast.
Tell us what we got wrong.
Tell us what we got wrong. We find out that she was a rodeo queen, and we get some old videos. Nothing like, I mean, the amount of smoking and drinking that happens in this episode alone made me a little bit sick to my stomach. But I appreciated throwing on the old VHSs of her being a rodeo queen. I was a little bit confused as to, she brought up like the old Avant gang. And Akron is the company we're worried about. What is Avant, Tom?
I don't know. I don't know if I even clocked that in this conversation. So what was she saying? Like,
She
there's
says
some sort
something
of gang,
about,
or?
like, I used to run around with all the people from the old Avant gang. And she made a comment about, how a bunch of them ended up in prison or in gangs. And so I thought maybe this had to do with the rich people in the country club in episode 1 that Tracy Letts is a part of. But I did not know... once again, unless the oxy got to me in the middle of this episode, she mentions this Avant gang, and I was super confused as to why we were bringing this up. I'm assuming it's how, like, Alan ended up on the team with, like, Donald.
That would make
and
sense.
them.
Yeah, because he said he was like 2 years ago. I think he said he got out of prison 2 years ago and was kind of like reformed, or somebody helped him or whatever. So maybe this is just kind of the breadcrumb for future episodes, and we're gonna meet or learn more about this.
Sure. This all leads to the weirdest part of this episode, which she comes out with Dale's gun and she like fake points it at Lee.
I mean, she real points it.
That's true, Tom. She real points it. She fake threatens, or at least claims she fake threatens. Remember, kids, treat every weapon as if it were loaded. Never point your weapon at anything you don't intend to shoot.
Yep.
This bothered me. Like, they're drunk. She's got a gun, and she plays this off as a joke. I thought, listen, I'd never hit a woman, but Lee definitely should have taken that gun and pistol whipped her, because this was a terrible joke. It
was all goofy. And then even like Lee, when he picks it up, like he's very irresponsible with it, drops goes off. She comes back in and goes off again. And then to secure said weapon, he just throws it under the couch cushion, which I'm hoping this comes back. Like in the last episode, he's like, somebody's getting ready to shoot him, and then he reaches in the couch cushion and pulls out this weapon. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, she's like, oh, it's not loaded. Clearly still loaded, and we didn't check to unload it even more. We know he knows how to handle a gun. He was given a revolver earlier in episodes. This whole thing, this was like a this is like a naked gun bit. Like, why does the gun keep going off?
Yeah, it's silly.
I do appreciate that they live on like so much land. They're not at all worried about someone being like, hey, there are gunshots happening at the Washburns. Like, no one's around to hear these. They did shoot through a window and they shot through the wall. And the camera clearly like notes that. So it's kind of like, all right, how is this going to come into play later? Betty Jo then warms to him. He like kind of rejects her. I mean, this all leads to horizontal dancing, but is this where Lee then dives into like, hey, I know things. He doesn't reveal that he's got the letters, but he's like talking to her about details that he should not know. And she's like, how'd you know about the skinheads? I didn't believe him because Dale was very paranoid before his death. And Lee brings up the fight that Dale writes about. And this is where Betty Jo then reveals that the fight was about Donald being Pearl's father, not Dale being Pearl's father.
Yeah, I feel like there's like a Maury Povich episode. We got to get the DNA test to confirm all of this.
Sure.
The line about Dale being paranoid is kind of interesting because we know Dale punched Donald, so potentially for that next week before his death, like something else potentially happened. Or was he paranoid of his brother because he punched him? Or like, I don't know what else happened. And again, this could be a lie told from an unreliable narrator in Betty Jo, but that idea of him being paranoid and like, I don't know, maybe it's just too clean because, he was paranoid, that's why he shot himself. Like, that doesn't make much sense.
Right. I'm also interested in, like, if this is all coming down to how land is being passed down to the next generation, if, like, Pearl being one brother's daughter and not the others, if that matters. But we did have the thing with Marty where Marty tells her, like, hey, this is not through... Like, this is not going to be passed to you because this is in the estate is under the trust of, like, the family. So... I'm interested to where like Pearl's parents, why that matters, other than just to point out to like it. There is a part where it seems like Betty Jo is trying to send Lee after Donald, and Lee even clocks it. He's like, "Hey, it almost feels like you're like using me, or some would say you're trying to use me to go after like." Donald. So I thought they're playing 3D chess in that bed, you know, Tom?
Exactly. They are. Yeah, in more ways than one.
Yeah, which is a good way of putting it. There's like 4 different times these guys go to somewhere else to smoke and drink and something's explained. I'm like, in thinking about the episode now, I'm like, oh, that's really weird. But like then we're on the front porch and she's explaining how she wound up with Dale. Like Donald was her original lover, and then why she married Dale, and then how Pearl came to be. I thought that was all interesting, but she is telling Lee quite a bit for him being a newspaper man.
Yeah, and it's like I don't know if I understand. Like clearly she wants to give some information to Lee, but she's opening up maybe a lot more than you think she kind of would and should, because she clearly kind of says like she was in love with Donald, knew Dale was gay, but just, I guess, went along with it otherwise and got him drunk one night to then be able to use this lie of saying Pearl was his daughter. It's a lot to take in.
Sure.
Which, by the way, also just a comment here, like, they do say in the scene that Pearl does not know. It's like Pearl doesn't know that Donald is her real father, which I'm assuming is going to come up later.
Right. And that's almost her telling Lee, like, hey, don't publish any of this because I don't want Pearl. Like, the only person it will negatively affect is Pearl. So she's also trying to guard this truth a little bit, or at least keep it with Lee. All of this culminates in, like, Lee showing up in the doorway and her being across the room staring at a window, and he like wraps her up from behind, and there's like a slow-mo weird cut. This honestly took me out of the show for a second. I thought I was watching like a Lifetime film. It was weird. It was like soft, like lens cover. I don't know. This was such a strange moment that I clocked it and was visibly upset, Tom.
I'm very much with you too. Yeah, the cinematography choices were unique and very outside of what we've seen so far in the show. And I also want to call out too, like for those that are watching this, like not on Hulu or on Hulu with commercials, the show's got really weird, abrupt commercials. Like it doesn't necessarily understand that this is going to be released to people that have commercials. So like I think in this cutscene right here, like they're on the bed and then it just cuts away and then it abruptly kind of brings them back. It's very odd. They need to do a better job of these transitions.
Yeah, they have him in his undies, and then the next thing you know, they're trying to sell you Depends. You know, it's like, hey, I got it, show. I've got issues. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. Before we like close this down, a couple of things I wanted to clock is how many times Lee just starts snooping in the house, and then he finds like a calendar, which I will quote. Vince Vaughn from Wedding Crashers. It's like a collage of a nude gay art show. It's like, why did he have to find that? Like, I don't know.
It didn't make any sense. It seemed very unnecessary. Like we already kind of know some of Dale's kind of backstory a little bit more. Like this didn't add anything,
Right.
unless there's some sort of clipping on here that is going to be revelatory future state, but I don't see that happening.
It would make more sense if he found like some more charcoal drawings and he would be like, oh,
yeah,
that guy was Dale's lover. Like, I did not understand this. I would love to get my hands on it. It looked like a beautiful calendar, but I didn't understand.
Do you think it was a calendar? I feel like it was more of a collage.
Collage, calendar, Tom. Anything can be a calendar if you write numbers on it, you know? It's like 1 through 30, 1 through 31. 1 through 40, anything could be a calendar.
And then, well, to that same argument, anything could be a collage if you just glue enough crap to it.
That's true. And Tom, I don't know if you clocked this, but anything can be a back scratcher. Talk to me about all the back scratching that's happening.
It was so funny. Like, so he takes an actual back scratcher and just kind of does it for the comedy in the scene. But even at the end, as he's walking out of the house, like he uses like the side of the house to be like a bear and like starts scratching his back against the house. So I don't know. Maybe he got back
bugs?
Poisoned. Yeah, bed bugs.
Well, I wonder if bed bugs are going to be... Because it is like a strange thing that you do clock, because he's doing it when Donald jogs over and sees him leaving Betty Jo's house. He's like rubbing his back against the brick wall. So like a bear. I don't know. Yeah. It's a very strange, very strange. And honestly, I thought that back scratcher was a writing crop at first. And I was like, okay, all right, got it. We did some dancing.
I do like at one point he uses the back scratcher to scratch his chin, which I find great.
Yeah. Too lazy to raise his hand that high, you know? I know that game, you know? Okay, so... These two, ultimate conclusion is, I'm not convinced Betty Jo is not the murderer. She outright says, like, hey, you know, you don't think I murdered him, right? And you can tell Lee's kind of clocking it, where it's like, I don't know that he's completely convinced. And then it's like, oh, do you think Donald's the murderer? So there's some interesting back and forth of which I've come to no conclusion on, I guess, Betty Jo.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, especially with the... of seemingly some new big bad or something at the end in this final sequence, which I know we kind of touched on, but we can touch on again. But there is a big point that Betty Jo makes, saying that the Washburgs are, as a family, are cash poor. So even though they may seem like they've got all this money, maybe that's not actually true, which does throw an interesting wrinkle to the dynamics of the show thus far.
Sure. Just like George Washington. Ton of land, ton of, we'll call it human capital, and very cash poor. So,
well, he only had $1 bills. That was the problem.
Right? Yeah. Because traditionally, the president, you were only given the denomination your face was on. That's a good point.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about this ending, Tom. To your point, they do kind of telegraph, hey, Sad Sack is like regretting all of his decisions out of nowhere. He's no longer the confident contractor we've known him to be. He's sitting at a light, car pulls up, And this is after he's called someone for help about what happened
Yes.
on the bridge to dispose of these bodies, which, once again, it's been some time. Like, they floated miles. They're not, like, hanging out down there.
Yeah, I don't get that at all. That was a really weird thing to say. Hey, we got to clean this thing up. Like we're well past the cleaning it up stage.
Right. There are kids in a creek somewhere that are like playing with those bodies. Like
Yeah,
they're like,
poking
hey,
it with sticks.
Billy, look what showed up. Yeah, they're poking it with sticks. One of them's like riding them. They're so buoyant, you know. I
Maybe
don't
those
know.
two kids that were on the bikes. I'm sure they found them.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I was a little bit confused by this. All of this to be like, there is a gentleman who's clearly does wet work. He shoots Alan in the neck. When Alan came back to life, I was like, oh, okay, that's a lot. And then he kind of drives away, slams into a car. So my understanding was that guy was approaching the vehicle in order to cleanly dispose of Alan's body, and the driving that happened and like led to people being around where his crash site was, like a spaceship, Tom, was just so that the hitman like couldn't clean it up as well as he wanted to. Not that Alan is still alive, I guess.
I always kind of got the sense that the hitman was just essentially making sure he was dead and finishing off the job. I didn't get a sense that he was going to then pick up his body and go dispose of it, right? Because he was still out in the middle of the street that anybody could have walked in at a certain point. Right. And this dude didn't really have like a mask on or anything really concealing him. But it is a very interesting wrinkle because this is now, like, of who we've met thus far, like, who does this guy belong to? And why is he being taken out by Alan? And maybe, like, is he just like a hitman that's going to kind of come and go? We're not going to see him, but maybe we're going to learn who ordered it. I got a lot of questions.
Yeah, he looks like a human scarecrow. Very distinct. Like, I feel like I could pick him up out of a lineup. I'll be like, the guy looks like he's never worn sunscreen in his life. He's about 6'4", and he weighs, I don't know, 90 pounds. Also, he's carrying a silenced 9mm. So, yeah.
It's a pretty good shot, too. You got to give him that.
Well, yeah, the first one was good. All the after ones were questionable. But poor Alan. I don't know. They did try and make him a little bit likable in this episode. I was like, no show. I know what this guy's done. He is not likable. So I'm just interested in what the turn was with Alan, as you said, like what the higher big bad is now that Alan is gone. Because he seemed to be, you know, the angel of death in the show that we were worried about. Well, now that he's gone, you know, what do we worry about? So... yeah, no, I enjoyed this one, Tom. For those of you that are listening, if you have theories, as long as you haven't like watched ahead, I don't know how you would, reach us at teambingepodcast@gmail.com. We have 3 episodes left or 2 episodes left?
I think there's 7, so I think we have 3 more.
Yep, 3 + 4 is 7. Good job, Tom. So we will be riding across the bridge or floating down the river towards the conclusion, just like those 2 guys that are going for a swim after Alan put holes in their head. Tom, what did I forget?
I just looked it on Wikipedia. There might be 8 episodes, it's either 7 or 8. We're not for sure.
I love a show with a mystery.
Follow us on the socials at Team Binge or at Team Binge Podcast. Let us know what you think of the show. If you are enjoying our nonsense, please write and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. That really helps us out. And please check out our back catalog. We've done a huge host of shows, a couple on Hulu or FX, but a good chunk on Apple. So if you got that streaming service, check us out.
Yes, please check us out. Tom, are you watching anything else outside of this show that you've enjoyed recently?
We are actively watching that Only Murders in a Building, which I briefly talked about potentially potting on, but you haven't seen the earlier seasons. And it's been enjoyable. I still very much love the main trio of actors in the show, but I don't think it's been as good as the previous seasons. But how about you?
I tried to watch Chad Powers, which is on Hulu. I got through about 5 minutes of it, and then I didn't go any farther than that.
Was it not good?
I don't know. I didn't. Honestly, I saw something that was like, oh, it's like Ted Lasso. And I was like, oh, interesting. But the first 5 minutes are not like Ted Lasso. So I bounced. I'm not saying I won't revisit. I love Glenn Powell, and I love football, the greatest American sport. And I love Hulu. I love hula hooping, and I love going to Hulaus or no
Hula dancing?
Yeah, that's the one. But no, I have nothing else, Tom. I've just been reading books and taking drugs. So for Team Binge, I have been Julian.
And I've been Tom. Till next week, everybody.